So today we're going to take a look at some win rate statistics for some of these agents on individual maps. What I've done is I've gone through all of the VCT games from APAC, NA, EMEA, and Brazil for the new patch, so post 4.04, so with the Astra changes and the Brim buffs and all of that being put in there. This is essentially the new meta according to the win rate data. And so I've gone through those 4 regions, taken a look at each map, broken it down in terms of the 3 most popular team comps that were played on each map, and then looking at the individual agent win rates as well that we will go into for each map as well. So let's start off with Ascent, and here on Ascent you can tell that most teams tend to agree for the most part about 4 of these 5 agents, but there is one difference, and that is which controller do you play. And it seems like the data is suggesting to not play one and maybe go with something else, because Astra here, as you can see, her comp has a pick rate of the highest, 29%, but only a win rate of 31%, shockingly low to be honest, whereas Omen and Brim, whilst, I mean, Omen has a pretty healthy percent pick rate here as well. He's on a 60% win rate, and Brim a lesser percent pick rate overall, but a very healthy win rate as well. This is out of 56 comps, so that's 28 full games of Ascent in this data set, and obviously 56 different comps. Each team picks a comp, right? So again, very popular choices here for these agents. That seems to be very standard, but it seems like you shouldn't be picking Astra and should maybe be going Omen and Brim instead. And if we take a look at the individual agent win rates, so this basically is every agent who was picked at least 5 times. At least 5 times or more, this is all of those agents. And here is the data. And again, similar sort of things coming out where Astra, pretty high pick rate, but a win rate is really not there. Brim, pretty low pick rate, but a very good win rate. And Omen seems like perhaps the best choice with a very healthy pick rate and a very good win rate as well. Now, some things you have to keep in mind, of course, is if this pick rate is really high, the win rate isn't gonna be really high, because like Sova here has a 100% pick rate, but his win rate has to be 50% because every team is picking him. Well, one team wins, one team loses. So of course, Sova has to. So if you see a really high pick rate, essentially, don't expect a really high win rate, because it's just impossible, because obviously you're going to play against each other a lot. So for instance, you know, Jet here, this pretty much means this 96%, 48% probably means that like Jet lost 1 game against a team that wasn't playing Jet. That's probably what this is. So don't freak out if you see a really high pick rate and a win rate that's slightly below 50%. Really don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. Same is probably true for Killjoy here a lot as well. But then on the flip side of that, if you do see a high pick rate with a win rate above 50%, like you see with KO here, this 80% or so and 55% win rate, that probably means that KO is punishing teams that aren't playing KO, which means he's really good on this map. And that can be seen as well with some things like Sage here. Not picked by a lot of teams, but when they do, it does not go well on this new patch. Cypher's doing okay, and I mean, Ascent is a pretty basic map overall to get into first, because generally most teams are going to play the 3 team comps that we saw before. And now let's come to Bind, and at the top here, our most popular team comp with a 25% pick rate is the Ascend comp. Obviously they were playing this before the new patch and the Brim buff, but now more teams picking it up, and it's doing fine with a 50% win rate as well. And then our second most popular comp, though, is a bit more all over the place, and I'm pretty sure that this came out of APAC, and I can't quite remember which team ran it a lot, but they were pretty successful with it, with a 15% pick rate overall. This is out of 16 games of Bind. Wasn't much Bind in there, to be honest, but 32 comps overall. 15% pick rate for this second one here, and an 80% win rate, which is quite an interesting one. You know, the Astra, I mean, Chamber, okay, you know, we see Chamber here as well, but then the Sova, we do have Sky in there as well, but then the big shock is perhaps Solo Jet, no Raze, but an 80% win rate, doing pretty well. And then our third comp is similar to the Ascend comp at the top, just minus the Sage plus the Chamber. Not picked a lot at all. There was a lot of different comps coming out on Bind. You know, there's a lot of agents that you can change, right? You can go for Astra over Brim, you can go Viper or without Viper, you can pick Sova, you can pick Sage, you can pick Chamber. You know, you could go Jet and Raze, which we saw from some teams. You can go just solo Raze, you can go solo Jet apparently. and do okay as well. So there is a lot of different team comps on Bind, which kind of, is shown by these low overall pick rates and everyone kind of doing their own thing. But this team comp with the Chamber, I'm pretty sure this is Optics team comp, did very well, had 100% win rate. And as we go to the individual agents, again with 5 or more matches, we kind of see the inverse of Ascent, where Astra with a low pick rate but a good win rate at 67%. So Astra actually doing better on Bind than Ascent, which I don't think most people would have had down. Brim not doing as well. I mean, this is a high pick rate and it's still 44%, so he's probably still doing okay overall. I wouldn't read too much into this. Viper, though, with a 65% but only a 38% win rate is shockingly low, and maybe that means that, Viper just isn't that good on Bind anymore. We'll obviously have to see as we go forward and more data comes about. Of course, we're still very early on and this isn't a massive sample size of games anyway, so we'll have to see how it goes, but really, this was quite shocking as well. Then we have Chamber on 38% pick rate, but doing very well on 83% win rate. So it seems like Chamber is a very healthy pick on this map. Then Sage doing pretty well for herself as well on 55% win rate there. Jet not so much. And obviously we just saw with that team comp that was the second most popular team comp was doing very well. So this kind of goes to show you, if you're picking Jet on this map, you probably aren't having a good time. Whereas Raze is doing absolutely fine, high pick rate, decent win rate. Sova, again, similar sort of thing to Viper, where kind of surprised me. Very healthy pick rate, but the win rate really quite low. Whereas Sky seems to be, if you're not picking Sky, you are in trouble, because Sky's 62% win rate with 66% pick rate pretty much says that anyone not picking Sky is getting punished for it quite often, and you really should be picking Sky on this map. And now let's come to Breeze. We have 23 full games of Breeze to look at, and well, Breeze is a bit more simple than some of, like, say, Bind, and you can see that with the pick rates of our 3 most popular comps are essentially 3/4 of all the games played on Breeze were using these 3 comps, and there isn't too much difference between them either. Basically, we have a Chamber for a Cypher here, and a KO for a Sky between the top and third most popular comps. However, when we look at the win rates, something is a bit amiss, and it seems like these 2 comps here are basically punishing anyone not playing these comps, and you can see that with the very high pick rates and the very healthy win rates as well. So it seems like basically pick these 4 agents and then pick one of Chamber or Cypher and you'll be doing pretty well on Breeze, whereas the Sky comp here for the KO is really not doing too well at all. And so it does seem like, pick these 4 plus one of these 2 and you'll be doing well on Breeze. And if we look at the individual elements for the win rates and agents, obviously Viper 100%, 50% win rate in there. Cypher actually, again, this still surprises me. It has a slightly higher pick rate overall on this map, and a pretty decent win rate, slightly higher than Chambers as well, but I think both are absolutely fine. Jet almost 100%, and Sova is at 100%. As I said, it's pretty basic. So the really only takeaway for me is that KO with a pretty high pick rate is doing very well. Sky with not such a high pick rate is not doing so well. So pick KO over Sky would be my advice for teams. Now let's come to Fracture. And Fracture, I don't know why, but teams still don't really seem to like playing Fracture all that much, and so we only actually have 12 full games. So really take this probably with a grain of salt in terms of the actual what's going on with the numbers here, because this is our top comp here, which is obviously the Breach. You're expecting a lot of course. Chamber as well, we saw quite a bit of, particularly in NA. We have 2 Viper comps, obviously Raze, 1 Astra comp actually, which I was kind of surprised about. And the Sage here as well, which is an interesting pick, and we'll get into that. But as you can see, this top comp here, 50% win rate, quarter of the pick rate, pretty decent comp. This Astra one, though, with the Viper as well, not doing nearly as well, only a 33% win rate. And the same can be said for this comp as well, with the Brim, with the Viper, only a 33% win rate. So it seems like the Viper not doing really too well at all. And as we come into the agent pick rates, that somewhat bears out, but again, there are quite a few different comps, little things being changed here and there. We have Astra, though, who is not doing very well on this map at all. Brim's doing absolutely fine. It seems like the go-to pick for most teams, and it looks like it should be the go-to pick for most teams. Viper actually not doing as badly as perhaps those first numbers indicated on the most popular comps, so it seems like, you know, if you get a bit wacky with Viper, maybe you can make something work, but still not great at 44%. Chamber doing absolutely fine. Cypher doing really well, to be honest. And in fact, some teams, there was a team in NA, I can't remember which one, but some teams ran Cypher plus Chamber, and that did very well. I think that was an unbeaten comp when teams ran Chamber plus Cypher, so that's doing very well for them. Sage as well, doing very healthy. Seems like a good pick on Fracture, which took some time, I think, for people to come around to the Sage on the map, but it looks like it's doing pretty well. Ray's absolutely fine, and Breach also pretty fine. It was a bit weird to me that there was a team in APAC, I think, that wasn't picking Breach on this map, and went 1-1, I think. So, yeah, that's why Breach doesn't have a 100% pick rate, but there we go. Those are the numbers. Not too much to take away other than, you know, good for Sage, and, you know, not so good for Astra or Viper. Now let's come to Haven, and this was absolutely shocking. We have 60 comps here, so 30 full games, which I think is the most of any map, but no one can agree on what to actually play, because the pick rates here for our most popular comps, as you can see, are woefully small. There is so much difference. There's difference in terms of the controllers. Even Jet wasn't always picked, as I'm sure many of you know. The teams were running Neon and teams were running Rays on this map as well. So even Jet wasn't a certainty. Killjoy or Chamber or even some Cypher were played as well. And then when it comes to the initiators, it was completely different. You have literally every combo of initiators in there as well. Haven was an absolute mess. There was plenty of just different comps all throughout all the regions, just everyone running their own thing, and then even teams changing it up a lot as well. And so really, in terms of the team comps, there isn't much to take away because the pick rates are so small. You know, this Astra one is doing okay, and you know, these top Omen ones aren't doing as well, but really there isn't much to take away from that at all. And I think really we have to just come to the agent win rates. And as you can see, again, this is agents with 5 or more games. There is a lot more than on the other maps because it's absolutely absurd. And so let's try and get into it. And well, the first thing is for the controllers. Let's focus on them first. Astra and Brim, even though they have less pick rate, doing better than Omen. Omen is still, you know, with this higher pick rate, doing okay. You know, this 44% isn't anything, you know, I don't think to be worried about or super worried about. But, you know, it seems like Astra or Brim are a viable option on Haven. You can make it work, which is interesting to see. Chamber, let's come to the Sentinels now. So we got Chamber, Cypher, Killjoy. Let's focus on those. Killjoy was the most popular and doing okay, not great. Cypher, it seems like, isn't that good of a pick. Most teams didn't go for him, and he didn't do that well. Chamber, though, doing pretty well. A third of the teams going for Chamber and getting rewarded for it with a decent win rate as well. The interesting part to me was Sage. Sage was only picked by a couple teams, not really high percent pick rate at all, but did really well. And so this, I don't know if this is a good pick or not, because it seems a bit weird and a bit out there, but it seems like it works, or at least it was working for a couple teams, and it was multiple teams. It wasn't just one team, you know, running this comp and they were just really good at Haven. This was a couple different teams from a couple different regions, I believe, running Sage and having success with it overall. Jet with this higher pick rate, this is absolutely fine. Rays, though, I mean, I mentioned this in my video. Don't pick Rays on Haven. It is not good. Really not good. Sova as well, very high pick rate, not doing too great. You know, he's okay, but not doing too great. KO, it seems, is a good choice. Breach as well. These Breach Sova comps, when teams ran those together, really didn't do that well. It seems like pairing like one of them with one of KO or Sky seems to be a bit better, and that's kind of reflected by KO and Sky having a better win rate than these two agents overall. And so initiators, I would probably recommend going for one of Sova plus KO Sky, or Breach plus KO or Sky, depending on what you want, because it seems like that is more successful. And also, don't pick Rays. Now let's come to Icebox, and again, there weren't many games played on Icebox, as you might expect with the changes, so only 14 full games played here. And Icebox, of course, is pretty simple, and you're not going to find too much deviation either. We do see a bit more these days than we used to, but here's the top pick rate in terms of team comp. Well, this is, I believe, the Guards team comp, where they run the Viper plus Omen, Sova, Chamber, Jet. Then this is the G2 comp here with the no Jet, most defensive comp of all time, triple Sentinel plus Viper, so like 3.5 Sentinels and then a Sova. Super, super defensive. Doing very well though. G2, of course, did win a lot of games that they played on Icebox, so it has a very high win percentage. And then finally, this comp is kind of basically just the old Killjoy comp. This is the Fnatic comp that they run with the Killjoy, also doing pretty well at 75% win rate there as well. So these three comps, they're all doing pretty well for themselves, and seems like, if all three have potential if you want to go for that. And here are the agents. So Omen wasn't picked that much, but only had a 40% win rate. And Viper had a very high pick rate, as you might expect, and had a 54% win rate, which pretty much means anytime a team was going for solo Omen and not picking Viper, they were losing, essentially, to teams that were running Viper. And I think that, most teams will probably figure out that you still have to pick Viper on this map. She's just too good and can't be messed with. Chamber, actually, very high pick rate, not doing too well on the win rate overall, but here's the big one for me. Killjoy. Any team that picked Killjoy got big time rewards, whether that be G2 or the Fnatic comp or whatever. They got very much rewarded by picking Killjoy, and maybe we'll see more teams lean into Killjoy, particularly off the success of G2 comps as well. Sage, healthy pick rate, very healthy win rate as well. Seems like Sage Shock Horror is still good on this map. Jett, actually not doing as well as I thought, but this again I think can mostly be attributed to G2. I wouldn't be surprised if they are the sole reason why this isn't 50%, beating teams with Jett, with just their Jetless comp. This is pretty much just the G2 effect, I would assume. So over 100%. And KO, well, it doesn't seem like the KO pick is really working on Icebox either. Not that high of a pick rate, but when they do pick him, it doesn't seem to go so well. And then finally, let's come to Split. And Split, as I've mentioned before, is famously the map that no one can agree on. And that bears out with the stats this time as well, because we've got so many little tiny differences in team comp. Again, actually the most popular comp, which was a bit of a surprise to me, maybe because I'm more tuned into EME and NA and we haven't seen this comp as much, but it's actually the old Ascent comp that they used at Worlds and won the World Championship with on that last map, with the Omen, Sage, Cypher, double duelist, Jett, Raze, and you can see it's still doing pretty well, and that's obviously no surprise. With the Omen buff, it's probably just better than it was before, and it was already good enough for Ascend, so it seems to work out. And yeah, you can see the win rate is doing pretty well, pretty healthy. It's a good choice for teams to make. But then we have some big differences, and again, this is a map where there just are a lot of differences. We've got this Astra, Viper, Chamber, Sky, and Raze comp, which is quite interesting, kind of a bit of a throwback comp, I suppose, with the Astra Viper, but still doing very well overall. 100% win rate with 11% pick rate. And then finally this one where we've got the KO. This is the mech comp with the KO Neon Breach, Chamber Astra, and that's doing okay with a 50% win rate as well. So let's take a look at the individual agents for the last time. And here, let's focus on the controllers again. And as you can see, all the controllers this time got into at least 5 games. And again, it seems like Astra and Viper are doing really well on Split. Much better than Brim, definitely, who's not having a good time. Omen still, though, with this high of a pick rate, is probably a decent option still. If you want to go for Omen, that's absolutely fine. Brim, though, maybe not so much. And Astra and Viper, you can absolutely play. And then we come to Chamber, who's doing okay, nothing special, 45% win rate, but Cypher doing really well as well with this 60% win rate. And I've mentioned this before, and I can't hammer this home enough, that without Viper or Cypher, it is a million times harder to run a default and have anything that goes towards A. Like, the people who are on A when you don't have a Viper or Cypher can basically just relax the whole game, because anytime you run a default, you just can't get past the first little bit towards ramp without one of these agents that easily. And so it's not a shock to me that, the teams that have a Viper or Cypher are doing better, because I just think, just pick one of them. Just at least one of them. You have to. And then Sage is doing okay with a decent pick rate, an okay win rate, I suppose. Jett, this was surprising to me, but Jett is actually doing pretty well. To be fair, this is off the back mostly of that Ascend comp doing pretty well. When teams picked solo Jett, it wasn't quite as good. But if you want to go double duelist with the Jett and the Raze, that can work pretty well. And Raze, again, just showing that Raze is really good with this high of a pick rate and a 52% win rate. KO seems to be doing okay as well. But then another surprise to me was the Breach and Sky. I expected maybe this would be flipped in terms of win rate, but Breach is actually not doing well at all, with only a 35% win rate on this map with a pretty high pick rate, whereas Skye seems like a bit of an underrated option on Split. We used to see Skye back in the day when Skye was like insane, right, with the super fast flashes and the 6 mana ult, 6 cost ult. And so yeah, that is where we will end this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, you know, maybe which agents are surprisingly good on certain maps, like a Skye on Split, as we see here. But let me know down in the comments below if you've had, you know, this burning belief that something like Skye is really good on Split, and this video has either informed you that you were right all along about your hot takes, or that maybe surprisingly you were wrong. You know, maybe you're a Breach fan on Split, and it turns out that that isn't the way that you should be going instead. Let me know in the comments down below, and have a really nice day.